And this method is going to be used if you only have, if you don't have an x term, or if you have an entire quantity being squared. Okay, so here's an example where you don't have an x term. Okay. You can solve this by factoring and setting your factors equal to 0. Okay, so you can use the zero product rule for this, but it may be easier in this case to isolate your squared value. Isolate your squared value here, you get 2x squared is equal to 16. Divide by 2, you get x squared is equal to 8. And now you can extract the square root, which means you undo this operation. Whatever you undo on one side of an equation, you need to undo on the other. Okay, and so you get x is equal to, now the one case, and this is what we come back to when I originally talked about absolute values or the plus and minuses and stuff, is if you extract a square root, you have to take into consideration both the positive and negative root. Okay, so in this, you have to take into consideration positive and negative root. And so when we answer this, we get the square root, plus or minus the square root of 8. Well, are there any perfect square factors you can remove from 8? Square root of 4 comes out as a 2. So your answer, x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 4, which is 2. And then this factor of 2 is going to stay inside your radical. Okay, so you do have to take that into consideration. And the other type of problem that you may extract the square root for are ones in which you have an entire quantity squared. Again, with no other x terms outside of that. So instead of just an x being squared, if you have a binomial being squared as well, you can extract the square root to solve it by following these same steps. Isolate the squared value. This time your squared value is a binomial. So if we add 4 to both sides, perform the same steps of extracting the square root. So take the square root of both sides. That leaves an x plus 2. You have to take into consideration the positive and negative root. Square root of 4 becomes a 2. And now when you solve for and isolate your x completely, you have your two solutions. I would always write your plus or minus value second or last in your expression. So here, if I subtract a 2 from both sides, I'm going to write that first, and then my plus or minus 2 will come next. Okay, so when you extract a square root, that's kind of the form that you'll use.